So I want to welcome everybody to tonight's seminar on lease options. I guarantee you're going to get some great value out of it. If you're an existing landlord, if you're a wholesaler, we're going to show you how you can use this to actually generate money for yourself. If you're, it's just a great program. It helped me get out of some major problems when I had at one point 350 rental properties and uh, really didn't know what I was doing. So with me tonight is Eddie Williams, and Eddie is financial advisor. In fact, he's my financial advisor. I've used him, my wife and he's made a huge difference for us. And I know he's made a huge difference for a lot of other people. So Eddie, welcome. Appreciate you being on as co-host.
Thank you.
Eddie also runs live events that are scheduled on the third Tuesday of every month, which would be tonight at this time in Southfield. But due to the fact that I had a lot of stuff to present in the room we were in, and I didn't have my PowerPoint machine working, so we're going to do this on a stream tonight. And but next month, Eddie, I think you'll probably be back in Southfield meeting live, correct?
That is the plan, correct. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So you want to go to our meetup sites it's National Real Estate Network, and the events will get posted on there as they come up. So if you have any questions during the seminar tonight, what we want you to do is put those questions into the chat, and then Eddie's going to catch them, and he'll ask me your questions as we go through it, or comments. Everything that we're going to do tonight, like if I'm talking about a rental farm or I'm talking about an option agreement, you will be able to get all those, and there's going to have the examples already written into them. So everything we're talking about, you're going to get a huge package. You're going to get options form, applications, the purchase agreements, everything that we talk about during this seminar. So, and then the other thing is I will record this seminar and then put it back out so you can watch it again. So if you're concerned about missing something, don't. So I see what we'll do here. I'm going to give it about, we'll wait till about 7:05 and we'll get started with the presentation. Feel free to tell us, put in the chat, who you are and, what you want to shout out to people. If you're a wholesaler, feel free to put your phone number in there. Even when this video goes out later, you'll show it again. So our number should be showing up under our names. Mine is 248-939-6232, and then Eddie's is 248-200-7573. So I think there's one. I don't see. Why don't you pop your names in and just say hi to us if you're on? Then that'll help Eddie be able to spot it. It says comments 1. Oh, Nicole's on. That's great. Do you see comments on yours, Eddie?
Yeah.
See Nicole? Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Nicole, glad to have you on. Nicole's a very experienced investor. Maybe Nicole, put on there where you're at. People can contact you. She's usually got some really good deals. She finds a lot of great deals. Anybody that's looking to team up with an investor as a partner, maybe a financial partner, Nicole would be a great person to do it with. So, her husband Josh is also, it must be there listening. He says hi. Josh is an incredible knowledgeable person when it comes to furnaces, almost anything. Nicole's a realtor. She's in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So great person to talk to. So we've got 8 people on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right into this and get started. I'm going to put my presentation up now, and I'm going to go full stream. So Eddie, you'll have to watch for the comments.
Okay.
Because in order to see the PowerPoint presentation. So tonight's all about landlording versus rent to own. And it's about getting above market rents. So anybody that's going to be in the landlord business, I think that you should be using lease options, or rent to own as they're called. And I'm going to try to spell out all the nuances of it and how you can use them effectively. So a couple of disclaimers I give at all my events. Real estate by its very nature is risky. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. We can't guarantee a profit or a loss. We do not provide legal or accounting or contracting advice. And said another way, so you don't sue me, everything I say tonight's a lie. Try it out, and if you like it, use it. So what I'm really saying is, don't sue us. We're just trying to give you good information that has worked for me, and I hope it works for you. So the goal tonight is to be able to get you more than a month and a half security deposit, like in the state of Michigan. Oh, let me say, in some states, because there's some people from other states, lease options might not be legal. So if you were going to do one, you'd probably have to go to a different state to do it. I think Texas might be one of those states. I'm not sure. So you want to check anything we're telling you tonight. You want to check locally to make sure that it works. I'm going to be focused on Michigan, but you can take the agreements and the forms I've got to wherever your state is, or have an attorney look them over there. So tonight's going to be about showing you how to get above a month and a half security deposit. In fact, you're not even going to ask for security deposit. You're going to take it all in the form of non-refundable option consideration. We're going to go over the ABCs of an option agreement, the how-to, the advantages. We're going to show you how to put tenants at risk, not you as the landlord. We're going to show you how to get above more than market rent. And we're going to do that with the form of collecting consideration, option consideration. And we're going to teach you how to make a tenant happy to pay more. So we're also going to show you how that you can be a hero to the tenant by cleaning up their credit, and finding a buyer before you even buy a property if you do this correctly, and how to exit properties at top dollar. So that's my objective, to being able to have you get out of tonight's event. So I'm just some of this stuff we've already said, so I'm just gonna skip through that. So how I got started in this was I had 350 rental properties. I went out of control. I caught a crooked housing inspector, and I helped the police department set up a sting operation. It was the worst mistake I ever made. The city I was in, it turned all the other inspectors against me, even though the guy was a major crook. He was the heating inspector. He was in cahoots with a contractor, and they would actually crack the heat exchangers, and just was killing landlords. So I basically, when that happened to me, I was about ready to have a nervous breakdown. So I had 350 rental houses that I wanted to get out of the market. So I did it basically with rent to own options, and they worked out really good. And I'll give you some examples of that right now. One house I had in, it was in the burbs, and I was tight for money. So the property, I just cleaned it all up, scrubbed it up. It needed a lot of maybe new carpet. It needed stuff that I didn't have the dollars to do. But I did a rent to own option. The person that came in this case gave me $5,000 in option consideration. Wanted to buy the house in 2 or 3 years. And he ended up giving me the $5,000. He ended up putting a roof on the house. He ended up putting a new furnace in the house. And then he relocated to out of state. So he did all those improvements to the house, paid me above market rent because he was also paying me a note on the house where he paid an extra $100 a month. So I was getting $100 above market rent, and it was in the form of a note. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So that was a pretty incredible deal. And overall, I had really good experience with options. The only thing where I ran into issues with the options were I sometimes, when they would leave the house, I would get it back a little dirtier than I would if they were a tenant. But I had already collected way above the security deposit, and I had done really well. So tonight's all about showing you how to create that binding option. We're going to go to what it is, and I'm going to jump forward here. So what is an option? An option is where you give somebody the exclusive right and privilege to buy your property at a certain price and terms at some point in the future. It's usually done by paying the owner a property fee, which is called consideration. So what you need to have to make any option binding are 6 components. You have to have, it's called CCLOM. So that's an acronym for a competent party. In other words, they need to be of legal age. In Michigan, I think you got to be 18 years old, and you can't be dealing with somebody that's got mental or emotional or physically incompetent. So now I'm going to jump back and tell you a real life story. I had a person come to me. He came to my office and he was driving a golf cart. I really didn't know what, I didn't ask questions about that, why he was driving a golf cart, but that's what he was driving. And he rented from me for 2 years, and then he quit making payments. And then I took him to court. And what I found out was he wasn't a competent party because I had the Association for the Mentally Retarded show up, their attorney, in court. She kept me in court for almost 2 years on a landlord-tenant eviction, and it was horrible. So you want to make sure you got a competent party when you're working. You need to get consideration. So in an option, they're going to give you consideration, which could be $100. It could be their spare tire. It could be a note, a promissory note. Consideration is something of value that they're giving you. So you have to have consideration. So if somebody wants to rent a house and they're going to give you a live pig, that could be their consideration. So it needs to have lawful objective. So like if I'm going to do a lease option on a house, I can't rent to somebody knowing that they're going to be running a drug house there. So you need to have a legal, it needs to be a lawful, objective, legal purpose. So you need to be within the law. You need to have offer, delivery, and acceptance. So you need to put it together where they understand that they're getting an option and they're accepting it. So we're going to show you how to do that. It needs to be a mutual agreement. In other words, a meeting of the minds. You both need to have a meeting of the minds. And I can't see the bottom thing on mine because I've got Eddie's picture. So it has to be proper form. That's what I can't read on the PowerPoint. So proper form means that in the state of Michigan, if you wrote your option agreement out on a napkin and the state of Michigan recognized that as a legal binding agreement, that's proper form. So different states have different definitions of what proper form would be. And but I can tell you it's going to need to be in writing. So And it's a unilateral agreement. So what is the unilateral agreement? Is exactly kind of what we described. It's where one party grants another party the right. You don't have to have two people. So if I gave Eddie, who's on with me, an option, what counts is that I'm the one giving the option. In other words, I'm telling him he can buy this house at a certain price terms, but he isn't obligated to do that. So if you had an option from me, it's a pretty good deal, right, Eddie? I'm on
Yep.
and you're not. So that's why tonight I want to show you how that when you get consideration, that you put the tenant at risk, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do that. So yes, it's a unilateral agreement. Yes, Eddie doesn't have to buy the house from me. Yes, I'm obligated to sell Eddie the house as long as all the conditions are being met. But because of the way I've structured it, Eddie's also obligated to make payments to me on a note or whatever format I've put together around that option consideration. So in an option, you've got two parties. You've got the optionor, who's the owner of the property, and I'm giving the option to the optionee, which in this case, if I was giving Eddie the option, I'd be giving him the exclusive right and privilege to purchase a piece of property from me at a certain price and terms somewhere in the future. So, and we're going to get in and show you a real simple option form that you can use to do that with. So some people don't think of this, but a right of first refusal is an option. So a lot of times tenant might ask you, can I, if you're going to sell the house in the future, I want first rights to buy that house. Well, that's could be a really scary thing because now you've given him the exclusive right and privilege to match anybody's offer. So now I've got the house. It's time for me to sell the house. The tenant hasn't offered to buy it, but he's got a first right of refusal. So now I bring buyers into the house, and the tenant tells each one of those buyers that comes into my house that he has a first right of refusal and he can buy the house. So they now they start to destroy your ability to sell it because they don't want to deal with something like that. So a first right of refusal can be a great thing for you to do, but not so great sometimes when you're giving one to somebody. So you want to be real careful when you're using a first right of refusal. It's a good thing to use if you're the one getting it. So the advantages of options with renting with a rental property are you want to increase your rental cash flow. So by that I mean when you get a property coming up, you want to establish what the rent is by whatever the market price is. So if the market price for the house that Eddie wants to get an option from me on is $900 a month, then I'm going to set my rental agreement at $900 a month. But I'm going to show you guys how you can get above market cash flow, not necessarily in the form of rent, but cash flow, and the way I structure my option with Eddie. So you want to reduce your maintenance costs. So let me spell out. We have our buyer for our properties is going to be somebody that wants to do a rent to own. So your ad you're going to put out to attract buyers is going to be for a rent to own. You're looking for somebody who, in their mind, doesn't qualify to buy the house. I'll say that again. In their minds, they don't qualify to buy the house, but that's not necessarily true because they had a bankruptcy in the past and they don't think they qualify, or they've got bruised credit. They don't think they qualify. But that's really up to a mortgage person or somebody qualified professional to look at it and do it. So you're going to offer a rent to own. And when you do a rent to own, I'm going to tell them that they're responsible for the maintenance on the house, and they don't have a problem with that. I've done hundreds of these, so I'm telling you that's not an issue. But sometimes they can't come up with the money to do that. So I'm going to show you how you can do that for them when you have to, but increase the price on the property. So, and like I talked about earlier, in most cases, I got improvements made to my properties, even though the people decided to leave at a later date. And if they make those improvements to the property, they're doing it at their cost. So when I did rental agreements, just a straight rental agreement, I always wanted to get a month and a half security deposit. In this case, I want to get option consideration. So when somebody's making an application to rent to own, I have one question: is how much money do you have for option consideration or to put down? So they've got their first month's rent, the $900, and then a lot of times when they're doing rent to own, they're going to tell you I've only got an additional $2,000, or they'll give you that number, whatever they got. So now I'm going to take that $2,000 for option consideration, but I'm going to tell them that I wanted 20% down on my property because I've done this, this, and this with it, and I want to be secure. So if it's a $100,000 house, if I tell them it's 10%, I want 10,000 down. If I tell them it's 20%, I want 20,000. So I'm going to tell them I'll take the $3,000 or the $2,000 cash they've got and a note, a personal note that they're going to pay an extra whatever they can afford to pay. That's why I always want to get a mortgage broker involved with everybody I'm taking an application from, because he can tell me, the mortgage broker is going to tell me how much that tenant can afford to pay a month. So if he tells me that the tenant can afford to pay $1,500 a month, I already know that my rent's $900. So I've got $900 from $1,500. I've got another $600 that I can get in the form of option and a note payment every month from them. So I want to determine what the note's going to be, and I'm going to determine that through the mortgage broker that I'm using. And when they pay option consideration, it's non-refundable. So that's your money, you keep it. So now I'm getting the $2,000 plus the note payment. And if I structure my note properly, when they want to walk away from the house, I'm in a position to negotiate with them because I've got a large note they owe me with monthly payments. So now I can say to them, look, I'm willing to tear this note up if I get my house back clean. I'm willing to negotiate it to a lesser payment. Or if you're really a tough landlord, maybe you want to just demand that you're going to get that money from them. So, and you've also taken a note now that has value because they've been making payments on it. And you can also factor that note at a later date where you can go out and sell it after you've collected for a year. You've got a payment stream. A note buyer might buy that note from you at a steep discount, but it's got value. So, and when somebody's doing a rent to own, they're not questioning what the price of the property is. So I would always establish my price at whatever the fair market value is, or it could be a little bit higher in some cases. So that's what the advantages are to you as an investor. Kind of spelt them out there. So you're going to need certain forms. You're going to need a rental application form, because now you're going to take your property that you want to rent and you're going to charge whatever you charge. It could be $50 for an application fee so that you can run the credit, do that. But if you're working with a mortgage broker, he's going to run the credit for you and probably not even charge you for it. But you've got to do a check on their past experience. So now if you have 5 people show up that are all want to do rent to own, and you've collected from 5 people the $50 fee, then that's $250 in non-refundable application fees you've got to determine who's the best tenant for that property. You're going to need a rental agreement, which I'm going to give you the one that we use in Michigan here. If you've got your own, that's great. And you're going to need a seller favorable option agreement, which is what we're going to go over tonight so you can understand it and know how to work with it. And you're going to want just a regular purchase agreement, a standard purchase agreement, or some people, you might call it a seller favorable purchase agreement. There's nothing spectacular about it. I have a buyer favorable purchase agreement that's totally different. So you'll just want to make sure you're using the standard purchase agreement. And I'm also going to give you the promissory note, and I'm going to show you how I use that. So those are the different forms you need.
Hey,
So,
Mark,
yes.
we have a question. Nicole would like to know what's a good servicing company in Michigan.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Nicole would like to know what is a good servicing company in Michigan.
A servicing. Okay, explain that more to me. When you say servicing company, I'm Nicole. Type in. Be more clear. I'm stupid in that regard. That's what happens when you deal with old people. They don't understand all the time.
All right. So she typed in to report the payments for the tenant's credit.
Oh, can't help you on that, but I do know that you want to make sure that they make all those payments to you, either in the form of a money order or a check would be the proper way to do it. Probably if you had I don't honestly, that's a really good question. I don't have an answer to it. So maybe somebody's listening would know. I'll work on finding it out for you. On the screen right now, you actually are seeing my option agreement that I use. It's just a simple one pager, but it took a while to develop this one pager, and it's got a lot of teeth in it. So I want to go through it with you step by step. So the option to purchase. So it's the optionor is who? That's the landlord. So in this case, Christopher is the optionor, and John Leonard Smith is the optionee. In consideration, a sum of, in this case, the guy had $3,000 cash that he could use for option consideration. He signed a rental agreement with me for market rent, and so he gave me the $3,000 cash, and he's giving me a promissory note for $7,000. So the option consideration, which is non-refundable, is a total of $10,000. So in consideration, a sum of $10,000 consisting of $3,000 cash and $7,000 in the form of a promissory note, copy attached. So you're going to attach a copy of the promissory note they signed, paid by the optionee, the receipt which is hereby acknowledged by the optionor. The optionor gives the optionee the exclusive option, right, and privilege of purchasing a certain property located in the city of, wherever your city, county of, Wayne, Michigan, described as. Now, when I put the legal description here, I don't put a full legal description. I put in enough that it spells out what it is. Basically, I don't want them to go record this option agreement, and so I'm not given quite enough stuff, but commonly known as, I put the address in there. I never had anybody file a notice with the county that they had a legal binding option with me, but I didn't want to structure it so they could. So now, the next part of the option agreement. This option is non-assignable by the optionee unless the optionor agrees separately in writing. So if I gave Eddie the exclusive right and privilege to purchase my property, he cannot assign that unless he gets it for me in writing. The optionor grants the optionee the right to exercise this option for a period commencing on, this was an old example, but it'd be commencing on such and such a date to such and such a date. So how do I determine what that is? Remember, I had the potential tenant, the person who wanted to do the lease option with me, meet with a mortgage broker and look it over. So now the mortgage broker says, I can get this person qualified to do a mortgage in this amount of time and get it closed. So he's going to help me determine what the time is that I need to do it. Now I'm going to probably give him more time than what he's telling me because I want to be as fair as I can in this thing. And remember, my objective is to get the house sold in my case. You can structure these where you'll never get your house sold, but that's, I don't feel like is putting the right moral focus on it. So my goal was to get out of all these properties I had, and this is how I did it. So so let me again say, so if the And if not exercised, this option shall expire February the 2nd, a year later, and the optionor shall be released from all obligations hereunder, legal or equitable. The obligation shall cease, and the consideration here above received by the optionor shall be retained by the optionor. Remember, it's non-refundable. So now I've got the note, and I've got the money that they gave me. I think this one was $3,000. Sent a note for $7,000, but they might have paid the note down, and the note might be at $6,500 now. So now I'm still holding on to that note, which is a bargaining chip. And remember, when people are wanting to rent to own, sometimes you can get their parents to co-sign the note. So that adds more teeth in it. So the optionee if the optionee elects to exercise this option, it shall take place according to the terms of the attached purchase agreement, which we're going to show you in a minute, which will have been initialed by the optionee, which will have been initialed by the optionee and the optionor. Now, in the case that I do it, a lot of times I'll have the optionor sign. I'm the optionee, I initial. That way I've got him already signed on a purchase agreement. Usually what happens is when you're doing a rent to own like this, the mortgage brokers later, when they're ready to close, you're going to re-sign a new purchase agreement at that point. But at least I've got all the basics covered here when I've got them, the initial purchase agreement and everything. Because a lot of people try to do an option agreement, they try to put all the terms into it, and you can't do that. That's why you've got to have the purchase agreement that's attached, because that dictates how the closing is going to happen. So notice of election to purchase shall be given by the optionee in writing by registered mail. So I'm saying the optionee is the landlord. They've got to send me registered mail telling me that they want to buy it. Any house I ever sold, I never got certified mail. But here's why you've got that in there. Let's say at a later date, you have to go to landlord tenant court, and they tell the judge they have an option to buy the property. And I can then say they never gave me a registered mail. Here's my option agreement. They agreed to do this, this, and this. It's covered in the option agreement, that they forfeit it, So, so let me reread this paragraph again. Notice of election to purchase shall be given by the optionee in writing by registered mail addressed to the optionor, the landlord, at whatever my address is. All the provisions of the rental agreement between the optionor and the optionee pertaining to the aforementioned property shall be performed by the optionee, or the option may be withdrawn by the optionor and the option consideration forfeited. Now I've tied in their rental agreement, if they have to follow all the terms of that, or they forfeit their option consideration. So I've got more teeth in it now. The optionee agrees to accept the subject property in its current as-is condition. So should the optionor be required to make any repairs of any kind whatsoever to the property, the cost of such repairs shall be added directly to the purchase price and the purchase agreement. So here's the deal. You just took all that guy's money, pretty much he had, and the furnace goes out in the house. There's no way that he's got the money to fix that furnace. So you're going to have to go in and pay for those repairs, but at least now I've gotten the right to add that to the cost of the purchase price. So the option consideration is for the sole purpose of granting the optionee the exclusive right and privilege to purchase subject property at the stated price and terms. The option to purchase will be terminated, all option consideration forfeited if any payment required on the option agreement or any payment required on the rental agreement is late for more than 10 days past the due date.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Since you're mentioning the payments, Nicole mentioned that she collects using ACH, the automated clearinghouse, through Relay Bank for her rental, but she's not sure how she would report those payments for the tenant's credit reporting. Don't know how to report it for the credit score, but wouldn't their canceled check showing they paid on time count towards the market, count towards the mortgage guy who was showing they did 12 or 24 or 36 months worth of payments?
In the past, what we had to do is we had to show the canceled checks and show those checks in the rental records. And the fact that you've got the checks, then that's a great thing. So, and that's why when you're working with the mortgage broker, you need to touch base on what he's going to need to qualify him for that, but it does have to be documented. So I can't see the last line of this particular. Let me go back and see if I can catch it on here. Oh, time is of the essence. In other words, um, you have to make this happen as quick as possible. So, in the event that the optionee does not meet the terms, conditions contained in the agreement and the addendum, all option consideration paid will be kept by the optionor. So I put that in there more than once, and then both parties are going to sign. Now, if you want to get real technical, really the only party that really has to sign that is the landlord, but I want their signature on this agreement because I spell out other things in there. And but I mean, from a technical standpoint, if I was stupid enough to do that, then it would be a binding agreement. And it is a binding agreement. So this is my promissory note, and I'm going to give you a blank. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. I'll apologize. So the promissory note, you can set your interest rate, whatever you want. It could be 2%, 1%. In this case, it's 6%. I don't know when on a personal promissory note, there could be an interest limit, but I know you're safe with 6 in Michigan. If it's a corporation, I think you can do a higher amount. But so anyway, it shows that the promissory notes for $7,000. It says the monthly payments of the principal and interest are $150 a month. So that's the additional money I'm getting above and beyond the market rent, are made, and the balance of the principal and interest are due to be made at the closing. So in other words, if they're making these payments on this note, and if they decide to close, then the full amount of the note has to be paid off. Otherwise, they'd be taking their note, and they would continue to make the payments. Your price would get reduced. So it's got like a balloon there if they elect to do that. It's got the property. They sign this, the note, and now you've got a legal binding note. You want to make sure you always hang on to the original note, and you can give them a copy. You can keep a copy in your file, but make sure you keep the original note that was signed. So I made it a little bit bigger here on the PowerPoint, and I'm going to be sending you the PowerPoint also and all the forms. But here's what you got to do. You're going to need to email me, and my email is maupin, maupin .mark, mark @gmail.com, and say I was on the lease option seminar. Please send me all the forms and the PowerPoint, and I'll send it to you. And it might take me a couple days to get it to you because I sometimes get really swamped, but it will come to you.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
In the example that you're giving, you own the property, but now correct me if I'm wrong. You can also do a lease option if you're not the owner of the property, meaning if you find somebody's looking to sell their property, you can be the middleman and do a lease option with a rent-to-own buyer. Is that correct?
You can do a buyer favorable option agreement with somebody and control that property, and then do another option agreement with somebody else. After that, I'm not going to go over buyer favorable options tonight because it's too much stuff to try to do in one setting, but we can schedule that for another night to do that.
Okay.
In some cases, people will get a property where there's a, like you take over a foreclosure and they got a 6-month right of redemption. you could option that property. You just need to make sure that they're going to close within the 6 months, and structure something. Once you start to understand all this stuff, you can start to play with how you're going to do this, So, anyway, you'll get a sample of this promissory note. And then here's the purchase agreement. In this case, it was a full-blown mortgage, and just a sample on how it's done. Now, when I'm having them sign this, they're signing it. I'm just going to initial it because if both parties sign the purchase agreement, we would no longer have an option agreement. We would have a binding purchase agreement. Okay. So you don't want to have both parties sign the purchase agreement. You as the landlord can initial it. They can sign it. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Again, I'm not an attorney. You always want to talk to an attorney for legal advice. So, but if you like what I'm saying and you want to try it on, go ahead. So I'm going to give you my rental agreement. And you may have a much better one, but so what happens is you've got a couple things going on. Remember, you're signing a rental agreement with them. That's a standalone rental agreement. So they have the right to rent that property at market rate. Then you had an option agreement. Okay. And the option agreement is totally separate. So they could still be renting the property from you, but they wouldn't have their option if they didn't make the payments on the note and the other stuff. But they would have a binding rental agreement, which is why you want to do it at market rent. So, and you still need to go to landlord tenant court if they're not making the payments on that. And you really don't need to bring up the option agreement, but if they do, then you can say they have a separate rental agreement. They can stay in the property. They had an option agreement. They forfeited it. Here's how they did it. Here's my simple agreement. So, I separate them so it doesn't create a problem. A lot of people combine them, which is you're setting yourself up for a nightmare. So that's my rental agreement. So now you as a real estate agent, like Nicole's a real estate agent, she could structure deals for other landlords where she's putting together the lease with options. So they're going to jump on that because she's now got a qualified buyer. In a lot of cases, if you've structured your lease option properly, now think about this: you've got people who didn't think they could buy the property, and they're going to the mortgage broker, and the mortgage broker now says they're qualified to actually buy the property. They didn't think they could, but they can on a mortgage. So now you, as the person that sent them to the mortgage broker, have a problem because now they can go buy anybody's property. So now you want to work with a mortgage broker that's going to protect your interest. And here's how he can protect your interest legitimately. He can say, you're lucky you're dealing with Nicole because Nicole is going to pay all the allowable closing costs. Nicole is going to sell you this house where you don't have, and it's different in the UP because tax proration are paid in arrears, not in advance. But if Nicole had the property in Oakland County, she's not going to, there'll be no tax prorations for you. In other words, they don't have to pay the prepaid taxes. So there's certain things that mortgage broker can do by saying you're lucky you're working with Nicole because now you've got the property. We'll structure this. We'll get you in there. So you want to have a mortgage broker that understands you're going to be sending them a lot of investors. Now Nicole's sending all these rent-to-own people to the mortgage broker. Some of them are actually qualified to buy houses. The ones that are left, she can now start to put deals together for other real estate investors, or she can end up with a qualified buyer for a house. So it's a great way to work on being able to put deals together. If she's bringing this to a landlord, she could keep half the option consideration, or she could keep all the option consideration. He could get the promissory note. she can collect the first month's rent, half the option consideration. There's a wide range of things you do. So if you're an investor out there, I highly recommend you get a license and run an ad to attract tenants and then qualify them. Remember, she's also collecting a non-refundable application fee. And you're just going to have to play with that and see what works for you.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
All right. In your experience, what percentage of the people don't actually follow through for whatever reason and buy the house and they wind up losing their option consideration?
So I can answer that. So when I first started doing options, I didn't put them at risk. I would tell them they can pay $100 a month and I'm going to match it with $100. And I would structure stuff to do it on a land contract. About 20 to 30% of those actually happened. And it was because it was too loosey goosey. Okay. But when I did it the other way, I structured it and I would say you're probably still going to only close on about 40% of them. But what have you done to protect yourself? You're way ahead with this versus a rent to own. I mean, versus a lease, a rental agreement. Does that make sense to you, Eddie?
Yep.
So if you're an investor, and I have not done any of these in recent years, so I've tried to talk some people into doing it as a business, but they haven't done it. Nicole's, who's on the call, is probably a person that would put it and make it happen. But anyway, the places to get your real estate license are listed here. If you're in Michigan, there's two of them in the Detroit metro area that are really good, Middleton and Michigan Real Estate Institute. You want to try to find somebody local. If you're even out of state investor, you don't want to sign up for a class that has you taking it for other, because state a class online that's national, because a lot of states are tougher to get license in. You want to find somebody local in your area to go to the classes with. That's my personal opinion on that. If you want a place to park your license, Roy Frank is somebody I know really well. That's his contact information. He also knows how to structure these agreements, put them together, fill them out. So if you're somebody that needs help doing it, he's somebody you can talk to in Michigan. He wouldn't be the right person if you're in another state. And he's a broker that works with investors. So you want to have a place the right ad. I use Craigslist, anywhere we post ads. I'm not sure if Facebook Marketplace, if you can run it there, that would be a great place if you can.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
All right. So when is the best time to use this strategy? And what I mean is, I assume that a year or so ago, when it was a seller's market, that will be the point of, doing this to sell your property or whatever. But is now a good time now that the market has shifted somewhat?
Yeah, now's like a great time because, you're seeing prices starting to drop. So, and there's a real shortage of rental properties. So when you start running a rent to own type thing, you're going to probably get inundated with people. And really what you're really wanting to do is find a qualified buyer for your property. So why not have your tenant be somebody that is going to be able to structure a sale at a retail price? Even if the market drops in price, you can reduce the price of the property. It's going to be whatever the property appraises for. Or remember, you could do owner financing in Michigan. You can do a contract for deed, which in Michigan is called a land contract. So there's certain states in the country, or you could do a private mortgage in some places. So there are ways that you can structure this, and I think the investor is going to really know if they're in that. If their intent is to have long-term rentals, then this might not be the right program for them. So, you know, I think it fits a ton of people's needs. So you're going to run your ad rent to own. Don't do lease option because a lot of tenants won't know what that means. Owner willing to work with buyers with bruised credit. Okay. So they think because they've got hospital bills or whatever that they won't qualify. You need to let a mortgage broker determine that. So you really want to put all of them through a mortgage broker. Remember, when you're working with somebody under rent to own, the price is not an issue, Eddie. That kind of answers your question there. They're just happy to be able to get something that they can work towards making it happen. Uh, so the right mortgage broker is really key in this. And I don't know how to help you. You need to go to real estate investor groups and find out who a mortgage broker is. You want to talk to the mortgage broker because you certainly don't want him qualifying them and saying, oh, well, you qualify. You want them qualifying and telling you, yeah, Nicole's the right person to work with because she'll pay all the allowable closing costs. You don't run into that. So you've got to tie them back with that person. And then remember, a lot of times tenants that you're working, if you got a house that you bought in a certain neighborhood, the folks who already live in that neighborhood and they want the kids to be in that neighborhood, they're willing to co-sign if they can get the kids close to you. So you can work that angle. Some people forget about that. So, and then why a mortgage broker is critical. It's kind of what I've been saying. He's going to sell you to the tenant. He's going to tell them what they need so the tenant does not walk, pay the allowable closing costs, get the tenants in the time, introduce special programs to the buyer, no tax prorations. You know, it's the kind of stuff I talked about. So we kind of already said we've removed ourselves from the maintenance. We're getting now above market rents because of the note payment, or above market cash flow, I should say. And qualify, take an application, collect a fee. I'm kind of repeating myself here. I actually threw two PowerPoints together, so I should have spent more time studying this before I got all you guys on. So like, here's an example. You want to qualify it. So like you've got a lot of people making applications. So if they immediately qualify for an FHA loan with minor credit issues, your option might be within 1 year. So if they got more major issues, it'll be more than a year. And, you know, so you want to structure, work with the mortgage guy to determine what that time period is going to be. We've already talked about that. Talked about that. Talked about that. We've kind of gone through this.
Mark.
Well, I'm just cruising through this really quick. So these were just different scenarios. So I think we're just going to open it up for questions basically now. Go ahead.
All right. Well, while we wait for any other questions, only 40% roughly are going to close. So any of that other 60% ever balked you about losing their option consideration?
No, never had that problem once because I was so clear about it.
Okay.
I read it to them. I signed it. I mean, you could even record because remember how long it take me? We're probably less than an hour doing this, and I read the agreement. So if you just read through the option agreement, read through the lease agreement, you could even videotape that. So I just don't think there's an issue there. So I hope this has been beneficial. If there's no stupid questions, so please write any questions into your comments. We'll be glad to take them. So let me remove this. We got Nicole with the most questions. That's it. So I hope this was valuable. I'm going to just thank everybody. Again, check us out on Meetup. It's National Real Estate Network in Michigan. We have meetup sites in other states too, New York, Illinois, Texas, New Jersey, California. So if you're on one of those other meetups,
Hey, Mark, we got a question. Jonathan wants to know what percentage of money should he make the tenant put down for rent to own so that he doesn't run them away.
But it's all a negotiation. So let's talk about that for a second. So let's say that your property is the retail value on that property is, I'll just Jonathan, you're in Michigan. Let's say the retail value is 150,000. So you could say that you want 10%. And if they start to balk at it or something, you could say, look, I really like you guys. You're the people I'm looking for. So I'll, in your case, let me, and you always wanted to use third party, let me talk to my wife because it's her business. And I'm going to see if I can't get that reduced, so you got to negotiate, but try to get the highest dollar you can. Remember, you're going to ask them how much money they're working with. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I didn't have two deals that were the same, in that I kind of had to structure them. I hope that helps. But the bottom line is you're going to end up with way more money than you did doing a regular rental agreement. And they're going to be at a lot more risk than they did in a regular rental agreement. And you're going to have the house at whatever the retail value is. You might even have to reduce the price to make it to come together on the mortgage. And remember, you can use this on problem properties, ones that you don't have all the dollars to fix it up, because the guy's looking for pride of ownership and stuff like that. So that's another thing you can do. Yeah, I see Jonathan said yes, answers. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jonathan, for being on. Any more questions?
I think that's about it.
All right. Guys, if you got value out of this, I'd really appreciate you telling people about our real estate investor group. We're one of the few ones that don't charge anything. We're just trying to pass knowledge on. I am a wholesaler. I'm doing a few new things that I didn't do in the past. Right now, if you have a property and you're a wholesaler or you have off-market properties, please contact me. I'm not trying to compete with you in your market, but what I do within a 7-day period, I can put your property in front of over 10 million investors. Now, how do I do that? I do it through social media. I have a very large network of Facebook people where I can take and post your property in another 40 states in real estate investor groups, so that that aren't afraid about investing out of state. So I won't compete with you in your market. So like if it's Nicole and she's in the UP, I'm going to take her flyer and I'm going to put my name on it. So people are going to call me. Her and I are going to talk. I'm going to charge 30% of what she would normally get on that wholesale deal if I bring her a buyer. Or I'm going to do a minimum commission of $2,500, whichever. So but I'm going to have that thing all over, and I'm going to be putting it in front of people that she wouldn't put it in front of. So that's a new thing I'm doing. I'm going to be sending out information on that. If you got interest in that, please let me know. So I see Sophie says this was very valuable. Thank you. Thank you for being on. If I've confused anybody, I apologize. And you can feel free to, my number's there. You can call me and ask questions too. I don't have issues with that. Nicole can tell you that. Sometimes I can't get back right away, but I will help you. So,
And before we wrap up, I just want to point out, as Mark mentioned earlier, for some of you who might not have been on earlier, typically we have these live also for people that are local. This time we had to do it via the internet only, but our next live meeting was always the third Tuesday of every month, always at 7 p.m. In Southfield, Michigan. If you are local, always free. We bring in different speakers covering different topics. Our next one is third Tuesday of the month, which is going to be April 18th, 7 p.m. Kirby's Coney Island, Southfield, Michigan, 10 Mile and Northwestern. And if you're on our email list, hopefully you'll see our email announcing the event as we get closer to that date.
perfect. And then Nicole just threw a comment in there. She's willing to help anybody that has questions too, and put her number in there. So now this video, this is being recorded and it'll go out to all those different places I just told you about. So this is going to go all over the country over the next, it'll be up on our YouTube channel. That's another thing. Just do a Google search for Mark Maupin YouTube channel, and you'll see there's all of our past meetings are recorded. They're there. Good, valuable information there too. So Eddie, thanks about giving notice. Thanks for being on as a co-host tonight. And I'm going to end the meeting for everybody. We appreciate you all being on. Thank you very much.